This episode of Void Signal is sponsored by Dark Force Fest. Visit darkforcefest.com or search Dark Force Fest anywhere to learn more about America's premier dark music festival experience. You can also find festival-related episodes of Void Signal anywhere podcasts haunt. Visit voidsignal.net to help support the creation of more ad-free Void Signal. Stay safe, stay loud, and take care.
Let's see. Is there anything that you need to kind of fill me in on, or do you want to just kind of wing it?
We are winging it. It is that is sort of that is sort of my brand.
Okay,
I will.
I'm down.
Okay, cool.
Just making sure.
I'm trying to do this thing where I do intros, which is like professional or whatever. So I guess I'll do that. But welcome to Void Signal. I'm your host, Brian Prime, and I'm joined by Jet from Vampire Freaks and, organizer of Dark Force Fest. So thank you
What's
so
up,
much for
Brian?
thank you so much for making this work. It was an honor to get to shake your hand and meet you at Dark Force this year. I'm so excited for to see the festival again and to get to hang out with you again. How are things with you since the fest?
Pretty good. It was great to meet you. So,
Mhm.
are you related to Optimus Prime? Is that the Prime?
That is part of the reason
It's
I
a
took it.
story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
I grew up watching
All right.
Transformers, so yeah, I had that. He was although the reason like Decepticons were purple and like way cooler and everything. So like, but that's why I got purple on the Void Signal logo and everything. But that is part of the reason I took the name Prime. So yeah.
All right. I'm a big Transformers fan. I definitely love to geek out on that.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. I'm a big fan of all that stuff. So I wanna ask you about. I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit about Dark Forest because it has evolved from being a convention kind of a feeling to a festival sort of a feeling, and it's an interesting kind of a balancing act that you're doing with the festival. Can you just talk a little bit about that? And are you happy with the direction it's going?
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much like, right on where it's kind of like a festival and a convention, it kind of
Mm-hmm.
combines elements from both. And the idea is, I've just done a lot of different events over the years. I've done more of a
Mm-hmm.
traditional festival where, called Trident Festival. We did that back in like 2010, and that was, just straight up, all bands like goth industrial bands, and
Yeah.
it was, a lot of fun. Everybody loved it, but I mean, we lost like a ton of money doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of like tried different stuff over the years. We did a bunch of club events and concerts. We did the convention thing, which was Dark Side of the Con, and we did CyberCon as a club event. And it's just been, really all about just trying new things and
Mm-hmm.
kind of combining our favorite parts from different events and also based on people's feedback. And so Dark Side of the Con was doing pretty well. And, we always kind of like send out like a survey asking people what they think, what they liked, what they didn't like, how we could improve,
Mm-hmm.
what they'd like us to focus on. And overwhelmingly, the response is people are coming for the bands and the music, which has always been, my love too, is the music as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of decided to shift it to more of a festival where we added the second stage. So now it's two stages and more of a focus on the bands and not as much of a focus on the convention aspect. But we
Hmm.
still have all the convention stuff. Like we still have all the vendors, we have the panels and the
Hmm.
presentations and the performances. So it's you get a kind of the best of both worlds with it.
Right. And so with that in mind that these surveys were sent out and listened to, would you say that like this festival has sort of, and Dark Forest Fest as a whole has sort of been built upon and improved upon based on community feedback? Is that pretty safe to say?
Yeah, that's definitely always like the goal.
Mm,
And I know, we're never gonna always get it 100% right, especially because, when it comes down to it, we're a small independent company. We're not Live Nation, doing
sure.
these huge mega festivals. So a lot of it has been a learning process.
Mm,
So, definitely like, I take people's feedback into consideration, which is why we send out the surveys, why we,
mm.
keep track of, the comments on social media and whatnot. So, yeah, definitely like, we're always trying to improve and, always trying to like listen to people's feedback.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And like you said, it's good to, I think, hearing what people have to say, like attendees and stuff, like, I feel like there's so much value in sort of like hearing their first impressions and sort of like what colors their perceptions of things. And so I do think it's a really good thing that you and everybody else involved has sort of taken feedback seriously. I know that there have been, and I was a vocal person who spoke out about sound issues in the past that have been wonderfully hammered out, and feedback was heard and listened to, and not just by myself but others. And it was so refreshing to be like, oh, what a relief! Like it's all these bands sound great, and the crew was really tight, and everything was. It felt like at least this year there was like sort of a magical blend of like everything sort of went fairly smoothly, at least from my perspective as an attendee. But I don't know. I guess you can tell me, like, was it a shit show behind this behind the scenes, or did it go pretty well?
So, yeah, definitely. I was happy that we definitely had improvements in the sound and the lights and even the stage. And we put
Hmm.
money into that. We put more money into getting better lights and getting more stage and renting out better sound. And also, you're right. Like the couple events ago, like we definitely had our sound issues and.
Hmm.
Honestly, the sound company we were using, they just were not that great. And,
Sure.
we want and so, we learned our lesson and we're not using them anymore.
Hmm.
So yeah, if something doesn't work out, we gotta shift and use somebody else. So we've got a different sound guy.
Hmm.
So actually, the guy that did the main stage this year, he was on the second stage the year before, and he did a really great job on the second stage the year before. So we upped him to the main stage. We got
Hmm.
better sound gear, and so yeah, it's always a learning process.
Hmm.
In terms of hiccups and whatnot. So basically, like, there's always going to be hiccups. Like, if everything were
Sure.
to run completely smooth, like, I would be worried
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's just so many moving parts. But the thing is, you kind of got to just roll with it and just
Hmm.
you gotta expect with an event of this size with so many things going on at the same time. Like, it's not always going to run 100% smooth, but
Sure.
we try our best. So the main issue we had at the most recent one
Hmm.
is we were supposed to start setting up at a certain time on Thursday afternoon,
Hmm.
and the hotel had booked a gig before us that went over their time by like a few hours, which really cut into our setup time.
Hmm.
So we were really scrambling to get the sound and lights set up, and even though it looked pretty good for like the first like day and a half, like
Hmm.
our sound and lights were not even at full capacity to where they could have been, just because we didn't have enough setup time. But I
Oh, I
mean,
see.
it still sounded, a lot better than the previous time. It still
Hmm.
looked a lot better, and definitely overall it's a big improvement. But yeah, we were definitely like scrambling behind the scenes to get all the gear set up properly. But yeah, it worked out, and
Hmm.
the hotel did assure us that next time we would definitely have a decent amount of setup time, and that wouldn't happen again. So that's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just sort of, you mentioned there's, how big it is and how there's so many different things going on at once. Like, there are two stages going. There are hallways full of people and vendors and water refreshment stations that were wonderfully restocked every single time I went outside to get something to drink. But
Nice.
all these moving parts and then panels. And do you foresee there reaching a point where maybe a current component of the festival is sort of maybe becomes too much? Like, do you ever foresee like panels maybe like becoming a smaller portion of the whole festival, or is the current plan just to keep everything as is until it becomes an issue? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when we added the second stage, we did have to get rid of a lot of the panel programming because
Sure.
we used to have like 3 or 4 small rooms for just doing panels,
Mm-hmm.
and we combined 2 spaces plus some of the vendor space to make like a big second stage area.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have 2 panel rooms. So we still have 2 panel rooms plus 2 stages plus like 100 vendor spaces, pretty much all going on at the same time. And we do like presentations in the panel rooms, like
Mm-hmm.
we had like the drag performers and like the sideshow performers, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like taking stuff away and whatnot, so for this upcoming one, the next year, it's pretty much going to be the same setup in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the layout. So, because we already, did a bunch of expansion to expand the 2 concert areas.
Right.
So we're looking pretty good on that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so as of now, it should be the same setup for next year. But yeah, I mean, I think one concern is capacity. We are starting to run out of capacity space, like if it keeps growing at this rate. So
Mm-hmm.
but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that was a thing that I have that was discussed in the Dark Force Reflections episode that I recorded with some of the Void Gang that was there.
Oh, I
Was
listened to the episode, by the way.
oh,
Like, it was
excellent.
super cool. Yeah, I appreciate all the positivity you guys have for the event and whatnot. And you guys are right. Like, it's a super great vibe, and it's all
Mhm.
about meeting up with people, like meeting up with your clan, and it kind of just brings all these people together. That there's a lot of people I see once a year at Dark Forest Fest, and it's great because it's like old friends. Like, it's like a great kind of like family get together, and it's cool that you
Mhm.
guys kind of like touch on that.
Yeah, agreed. And it was a thing that sort of has it's enriched my life so much to sort of like find a tribe and a community of people who want to meet you at a thing. Like, oh, let's go experience this together, and we'll go see this band, and we'll separate for a time, and just like you said, it's sort of a chosen family kind of a thing. I get to go do this thing that's great with these people that are great. And yeah, I just it was such a huge component of the festival to me that like as much as it is, as you said, the bands are a big draw, and they certainly are. I mean, I've got to see some fantastic performances. But the big draw, at least for me now, is that aspect of like, who am I going to see? My community, my people, kind of a thing.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when it comes down to it, like an event is really nothing without its attendees. And it's really great that we have such a nice crowd. Like, everybody's super like accepting and positive, and
Mm-hmm.
even like the venue, like they always say that our crowd is their favorite crowd, which says a lot coming from like a corporate like Sheraton hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and they deal with all these like corporate clients and weddings and all that, and like we're kind of the weirdos, and we're their favorite crowd, so that says a lot because like it's like our community is just very accepting, and it's just like a really great vibe.
Yeah, agreed. And I've heard that spoken of our community in other circles as well, like the Crocodile staff for Mechanismus Festival. Oh, I love it when you guys are here because everybody's so nice. And there's that component of like people are pretty patient, pretty nice, pretty friendly and welcoming. I've also think that our particular scene tends to have a lot of service industry staff that work in it, and people who have to work in customer service or have to work in healthcare or whatever, but deal with people. And so sort of their tolerances are much higher and their patience is much higher for like, this is, this is a job I've had to do, kind of a thing. So I feel like there's
Yeah.
that component to it of like meeting people where they are a little bit more. if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think also the alternative scene in general, like, it's not just our event, like other alternative, goth industrial or any really kind of alternative scenes tend to be a lot more accepting
Mm-hmm.
because, those are the people that kind of got bullied and, were the outcasts as teenagers that, kind of like all come together and it's just, it's just like a really good vibe with everybody.
Yeah. And that was sort of the reason that you, presumably, that you kind of started making Vampire Freaks back in the day to begin with, I assume, right?
Yeah, I mean, the social networking site back in the day, it was really just like a project of mine. Like, I have a background in computer programming, so
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of just a fun project to do. And I've always had a love for the goth industrial scene. So, yeah, really, it was just all about trying to have an online community to support the scene.
I incredibly, noble thing to sort of put together. Significantly easier now, thanks to all the different platforms where you can just make a community of your own. But it was, back at that time, there was nothing. Like it was, there were not many options. So do you see Dark Force Fest as just being a sort of a evolution of sort of the spirit of Vampire Freaks of like, here's a community and you can join it and will be welcome in it and we'll all go, experience this band together or what have you.
Yeah, actually, that's totally how I see it. Because when Vampire Freak first started as a social networking site, like it was just
Mm-hmm.
like the community was just so great. Everybody on there just like really got along, and it was just like I just really enjoyed it. There was just like a camaraderie there, and
Mm-hmm.
just like there was something really special about it. And the internet changed over the years. The social networking site we had it from like 2004 to 2020. So in that 16 years of time, the internet became a vastly different place.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of lost that love for me after a while. Like, as it got, kind of more popular, like more people discovered it, and it kind of like also got different people. I think sometimes you kind of have like a community that just like has some sort of special magic to it, and you can't just hold on to it forever, I guess. But I feel like Dark Force Fest really has captured that,
Mm-hmm.
just like that sense of community and just like that really great feeling. At least for me, like I feel like very passionate about it because I really enjoy it, and
Mm-hmm.
because like other people really enjoy it. And there's been times where we've done an event, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not doing this anymore because it's just so much work. But
Right.
then people just love it so much, and like just the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it's like building this community and bringing so much joy to people that it just makes me love it. And I feel like you're right, it kind of captures that special something we had at the Vampire Free Social Networking site back in the day.
Yeah. Agree. It does have that sort of, I mean, you can run into somebody in the bathroom and you don't know each other, but it's like, that sense of like, how's it going? We're taking a break. We're getting a second here to like, or it's somebody at the water cooler of like, oh man, having a great festival and, hope you look great or whatever. That
Yeah.
it is a very good feeling. And I've encouraged many people to go to it with the express purpose of like, if you are a shy person, go to this festival, meet a stranger, say hello to, take a chance and say hello to somebody and you will find somebody, meet a group of people and you will have a friendly face in every room that you go into. And that's like such a good thing to feel and have an experience. So I think it's such an important component of the festival overall. So I do agree with you there. Real quick, just to kind of shift gears a little bit, a question I did want to get to and ask you about is, so I'm going to pick your brain on this a little bit. Criteria surrounding picking bands for the lineup. A lot of it, I presume, is fan request. I know a couple of the bands announced for next year have been fan requested. But aside from fan requests, can you just talk a little bit about what kind of goes into you deciding whether or not somebody plays the fest or not?
Yeah, so you're right. We got a ton of requests, and there's a few different ways we do it. So basically, after the event, we send out a poll to everybody that bought a ticket,
Mm,
and we asked them to give us feedback on the event. So that was kind of how I mentioned earlier, how we kind of like get feedback to improve the event. And part of
mm,
that feedback is we ask bands they'd like to see. So we keep track of that, and we also post on our Facebook group, which is kind of like a fun little community in itself. And then we post
mm,
on our Instagram, and we, tally up the email polls, we tally up the Facebook group polls, we tally up the Instagram, and we've got somebody that just like tallies it all up, makes a spreadsheet, keeps track of how many votes each band gets.
mm,
And that is our primary driving factor. One factor is also we've had a few people mention that they would like to not really see too many repeat bands. And I know
mm,
in the past we've done some repeat bands that kind of like mostly because we've gotten a lot of requests for repeat bands in the past, and we're like,
mm,
okay, well, we'll try to give people what they want. So we're trying to mix it up a little bit more now. The vast majority of the bands are picked out based on basically people's requests, and we've got relationships with various booking agents and various bands that
sure.
we will talk to them, see who's available, and what makes sense.
Mm,
And once, other than that, we'll usually have like a few slots left over for more like up and coming bands, and we have an application on our site where people will apply, and we get like
gotcha.
hundreds of applications, and I have people like emailing me, texting me, messaging me on Facebook all day long, like, hey,
Sure.
can you get my band to play?
Yeah.
And like I feel bad because I can't get everybody to perform because we only have like 35 slots or whatever.
Right.
And most of those slots are to going to bands that are more like known, that people have requested, that we are paying significant fees to come down for. And then for the remainder bands, we check out the applications. I listen to the music, and also I check how many requests we got for the band, and we
Mm,
also check out like how they're doing on Spotify plays, on social media, and all that.
mm,
And yeah, just like a few different factors. We also have been trying to. It's always been a focus for us to try to support the North American scene, because I find that for the goth industrial scene, like a lot of like the more popular bands are in Europe, which I guess makes sense. Particularly Germany. Like you go to Germany, and industrial is like almost mainstream over there. It's
yeah.
awesome. And like I wish it was like that here in the U.S., but it's not. But
Yeah.
anyway, Germany gets all the love in terms of goth industrial bands, and Europe in general, like all of it. So while we definitely are trying to bring in European bands based
Mm,
on people's requests, especially for like the more up and coming bands that we're showcasing for the openers.
mm.
We do try to focus on North American bands to kind of show some love for the local scene.
Yeah, sure. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Real quick, I do want to just tap you about you mentioned Spotify plays. I understand that's a valuable, or I'll put that question to you instead, because I guess I don't know that, but how much value do you think that Spotify monthly listeners is as a metric versus, I mean, are other metrics considered like TikTok or YouTube or, I guess I'm just sort of curious if like that's the only sort of gauge used, and if so, how effective do you find it to be, or have you found it to be in the past?
So it's definitely not only based on Spotify plays. Because like I definitely don't think that that number is completely reliable, because like there'll be a band that has maybe 10,000 monthly listens, but I know they're gonna, if they played a show in New York, they would have 500 people buy a ticket. Whereas like I know there's
Mhm.
other bands that might have 100,000 listens that probably 25 people would show up to a show for them locally. So it's definitely not the end all be all,
Mhm.
but I think when it comes down to it, you need some sort of reference.
Sure.
And that's kind of like just how the world works, like not even in just music, like, with like actors are getting booked based on their Instagram followers, and really social media followers and Spotify plays. You can't really deny that that is
Mm,
influencing people, like not just in music, but in other assets
sure.
or aspects of life. But one thing that I do like about the Spotify number is it shows people are actually listening to your music.
Hmm.
Whereas, granted, it can be skewed based on playlists and whatnot. I think I do like that it's showing that, people are actually listening to music.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. So, the other components that, when it comes to the lineup itself and sort of, because I feel like the genre, it is diverse. And the days feel very sort of not quite themed, but there are particular bands that sort of go well together on certain days. Do you? Personally, first off, I'm a big fan of blending genre and like not paying attention to like only goth music or only industrial or only whatever. I like the mix and match, but how much of that is a component when you go for choosing bands of like, okay, we've got our big industrial band, we need a goth band or something like that.
So definitely we do try to mix it up.
Mm,
And I think personally I have more of a background booking industrial bands just because I guess that's just more of my experience. So
mhm,
it's a little bit easier for me to book the industrial bands because the relationships are there, and with the goth bands it tends to be a little bit more of a struggle for some reason. I'm not sure if that's because of the way it works with the booking agents or what.
mm,
But we definitely make it a point to mix it up, get a few goth bands, we try to
mm,
mix in like some sort of like kind of like punk rocky band here and there,
mm.
some synth pop and stuff like that. But I think yeah, definitely it's an effort to try to mix up the genres for sure. And I also understand that people have varied musical tastes
Mm.
within the goth industrial scene. So you want to try to be able to have like a little bit of something for people that might not necessarily like the industrial all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I just sort of laugh because like industrial is like my main sort of a forte. So it's like, when I start thinking about who I want to book for Void Signal when it comes to goth music, like I almost need somebody to tell me because because nothing against goth musicians or anything, but just like it's not my main flavor. So I don't listen to a lot of it. So I almost feel unqualified to be able to say like, well, I should listen to this one or I should book this one or whatever because I don't know, I guess. Like, so yeah, that,
I totally get that. And I think especially when I was younger, I was primarily mostly into industrial, but I would still
mm,
listen to some goth music. Like, The Cure's my favorite band. They're not industrial, and
mm,
I would listen to a lot of goth bands still. But I find that as I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate goth music more so.
mm.
So yeah, I guess your musical tastes kind of vary with age as well.
Yeah, I have found that as I've gotten older, I've become a lot more patient with music. Like we used to, oh, this song is boring as shit. Let me switch. Like, 30 seconds into it. But, now I'm much more able to like sit and let a longer song play out kind of a thing. Which is maybe not contemporary with how things have gotten because songs are so short now. Everything's like songs are like 2 minutes, if that sometimes. And I understand if it's
Yeah.
short, it'll get played again, but you know, still. But yeah, my tastes have definitely mellowed as I've gotten older. But is there anything in particular that has stuck out to you recently as like a band that you heard that you just were like, man, this is like the freshest thing I've heard in a minute?
So one thing I really love about booking bands for Dark Forest Fest is
Hmm.
I actually do go through the applications and like listen to the bands.
Hmm.
And I wind up like discovering like a ton of bands each year just from the applications. And we get some really good bands. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know these guys existed, but they're really good. And then, I wind up booking some of them. And then some people are like, yeah, these guys are awesome. And like, other people actually do know about them, even though I haven't heard them. And other people are like, oh, I've never heard of these guys, but they sound great. So, yeah, I think that's definitely one nice thing I like about
Hmm.
doing the festival is just being exposed to all the new music and also being able to feature bands that not everybody might know about.
Yeah. That was definitely a thing I like about festivals in general is just being able to hear and experience bands that I don't know, and was a really fun component of Dark Force this year for me. Was, I have no idea who October Noir is, and they happen to be from like my hometown in Florida, like from when I was much younger, and they turned out to be like a cool thing that I got to experience. I'm like, I like options. I like wandering into, seeing a name on a poster and I'm having no idea who it is, but having, 3 or 4 people be like, don't miss this. And, uh, I like that a lot of like, oh, I don't know this, and getting to experience it with somebody else who's also excited about it. Because even if it's not my main flavor or a thing I particularly like all that much, like their enthusiasm for it sort of makes it better. So you're still kind of not having a bad time, kind of. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah,
That totally makes sense for sure.
yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, I mean, like I was saying, it's all about like trying to support the scene in general, and like
Mm,
part of that is trying to, take a chance on a newer band to kind of,
mm,
they might wind up being the next big thing, but they got to start somewhere.
mm. Has there been any band in particular that from a recent Dark Horse that like just like exceeded your expectations, that you were like, oh, I'm so glad that we got this one?
So the last Dark Force Fest, I was really excited about Augur because
Yes.
I had never even heard of them before, and then they kind of just like came across the radar, and I was like, wow, these guys are great,
Hmm.
and that guy's voice is just like amazing. So yeah, I was excited about them.
Yeah, I agree. That was the one that like like a minute ago when I was like, oh, I don't know this name. Like that was the exact band I was thinking of. Like because I had
Yeah,
like 3 people be like, don't miss this, don't miss Augur, and I did not, and I was agreed. Really stellar performance, blew me away. Very good.
nice. But yeah, there's a few other bands. I know like a couple years ago I was really excited to get Rabbit Junk,
Hmm.
and they totally like were awesome so much that we had to have them 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool. I saw you had them on their show too. But yeah, they were like the sweetest guys too. And the other thing is
Mhm.
too, like a lot of these bands are just like a total pleasure. They just like meet and like actually like
Mhm.
they're real people, and it's nice when people are just like really actually nice and down to earth.
Yes, not just Rabbit Junk, who are wonderful people, but Stabbing Westward played this year, and Chris Hall is also just a really cool person. Like, if
Yeah,
to anybody listening, if you see him out somewhere, like, go fucking say hello. He will be nice to you, and will,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, Steph and Westford, they're so nice. Like it actually like blows my mind like how like just like nice and easygoing and down to earth they are, because these guys are like legit rock stars. Like, they
Yeah.
have been on MTV, they've been on major radio stations, and they're just like so humble.
Mhm.
And that's just really refreshing because, sometimes you do have to deal with egos, working with bands. But, luckily, like people in general have been like super cool. And yes, you're right. Seven Wester is an
Mhm.
example of just like a super like nice band, even though they're like, have really gotten a lot of success.
Yeah. For their notoriety and things, and long careers, being very adjacent to, sort of mainstream, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick question I wanted to get to you before I put the last question to you. But what comes next for Dark Force Fest? So there's, Dark Force Fest 2025 bands are being announced for it right now. But where do you see this going beyond that? What do you want it to be?
Beyond 2025 or beyond the bands being announced?
Beyond 2025, what is Dark Force Fest going to become in relation to Vampire Freaks?
I mean, it does take up a lot of my time, but I actually do enjoy it. It's
Hmm.
been, definitely rewarding. So kind of just, gonna keep rolling with it. I know people have suggested we look into potentially like a larger venue, or potentially look into doing it twice a year. So, there's options up in the air, but like I was saying, like because it does has been growing each year, like I don't know how sustainable it is at this venue at this rate, but I'm gonna enjoy it as much as I can because we've got a really good thing going. And
Mm,
I love the venue. So, worst case, if we have to just be like, okay, tickets are sold out, nobody else can come, then that's not necessarily a terrible thing. Yeah, it's still kind of up in the air, but definitely like the goal is to keep improving it,
mm,
and as people keep supporting it, we keep putting, more efforts into it. We
mm,
try to improve the lineup each year. That's a thing. Like, if we have a successful Dark Force Fest, we're able to put those funds into the next year to, get more bands that people requested, and try to really increase our budget for bands. So
mm.
definitely like just want to keep improving it.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, last question I will put to you. Last question of the show. Just what is something that you have been enjoying recently? And your answer can be anything: book, TV show, movie, or what? Just what's something that you're jazzed about when you wake up lately?
I don't know so much recently. I mean, I live out in the woods in Pennsylvania, so I don't really like
Mm,
do that much. I'm like always working. I work on Vampire Freaks. That's like my main full-time gig.
yeah.
We have like a warehouse, and I actually like coming into the warehouse, just hanging out with the employees and, getting some stuff done. We've got a really good crew. I like playing with Legos.
Okay.
And I like coming into New York every once in a while, getting some stuff done. I went
Mhm.
I went kayaking a
Nice.
couple weeks ago with the wife. I like
Nice.
doing like yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn, but now that I live in the Poconos now,
Yeah.
and I'm like in the woods. So now I'm in the woods. I do more kind of like nature stuff. If you like, we'll
Yeah.
go on a hike, we'll go to like the lake and whatnot, which
Nice.
a little bit different from what I did as a kid. But
No,
yeah, that's pretty much it.
that's fun. Those are very
Yeah.
fun things to do. I'm not a very naturey sort of a person, but when I do find myself sort of in it, like it's not a thing I seek out, but when I'm in it, I do try and stop and appreciate it. When I was living in Reno for a long time, like if you've never been to Reno, also Lake Tahoe is beautiful, and you take an edible or you smoke, and then you float in the lake, and beautiful
Oh,
alpine
nice.
water and beautiful trees, and it's Lake Tahoe is amazing, and Reno can be rad. Reno is cool. That's my flavor of outdoors, where it's like it's not too hot, not too humid, and it's the temperature's going to drop 20 degrees when the sun goes down, kind of a thing. That's it's a little a little more my vibe than like woods, I guess. Like
Yeah, yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
yeah,
And yeah, I actually enjoy doing Dark Force stuff, like even like leading up to it, like for the full year. Like
mhm,
I look forward to the band announcements and seeing people's reactions, seeing people's comments on it. And
mm,
when we book like a more popular band, like people get all excited about it, which is
yeah,
super cool. And then sometimes when if we book like a more like opening slot band and people are still excited about it, I'm like, okay, I wasn't expecting people to get
yeah.
that excited about these guys, so that's pretty cool too.
Nice. So,
Um,
just to interrupt you really quick, it sounds like
yeah.
honestly, it sounds almost like you're sort of very sort of present in a lot of this. Just below the surface of Dark Force Fest and just below the surface of the Empire Freaks, you are very much sort of on the front lines of it, like watching how it happens as it unfolds. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is all I do, like
Hmm.
24/7. I'm like, from when I wake up until when I go to sleep, I'm either working on Vampire Freaks or Dark Force Fest. And like I like to do it. I feel blessed that I'm able to do this for a living.
Hmm.
Just do Vampire Freaks and Dark Force Fest. And like I said, Vampire Freaks is my primary gig, but it's nice that I'm able to still do Dark Force Fest
Hmm.
as like a side gig that's still very rewarding and people like it so much and we're not losing a ton of money on it, so that's
Yeah.
always good.
Yeah. Imagine having a
But yeah,
festival as your side gig, like like a whole big important thing that means a whole lot to a ton of people. Just like yeah, that's my side thing I do.
yeah, I mean, I love to do it, and I've been doing events for a long time,
Hmm.
so it's just something I like to do,
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's
but
pretty
yeah,
cool.
it's been fun. But you're right, I'm super involved with it.
Hmm.
Sometimes people think that we're this like big corporation with like people in suits having board meetings, but it's really not. Like we're super DIY. Like yeah, we've got like a staff working on it, but like
Hmm.
we definitely do like the whole punk rock approach where we're doing it ourselves.
Sure. I guess it is good that the perception is that of professionalism and like, oh, this is very, straight laced and like, these people have their shit together. I mean, I guess it's good
Yeah.
that that is the perception, even if the reality is the like sort of DIY kind of approach to it. Because I mean,
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
don't get me wrong. Like, we
Mhm.
definitely do keep it professional. We definitely
Sure.
make sure we do everything the right way,
Mhm.
but we're just not corporate. Like, it's not like we're cutting corners. Like, we're definitely putting in the staffing, the time, and the money where it needs to go, so that we run everything properly.
Mhm.
But it's very we definitely like we run lean where like we don't have like a bunch of, like I said, like it's not like a bunch of people in suits having board meetings, and it's just like we're doing this, like we're hiring the right people, we're getting it done, we're
Mhm.
putting a lot of time and effort into it, but when it comes down to it, we're it's a small company and it's really like a handful of us doing most of the stuff.
Mhm. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds like you're pretty involved, pretty close to it. So that's interesting to sort of just know as somebody like, as an attendee and as somebody sort of, kind of close to the whole thing. It's just a sort of, I mean, I can understand it because, I've got my own thing I run and like it's what I do from the moment I wake up until I go to sleep. I'm probably thinking about it in some capacity. Um,
Yeah.
so
I
yeah.
love what you're doing with voice signal, by the way. I want to give you props.
Oh,
It's
thank you
pretty
so much.
cool.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, because like I try listening to like some podcasts here and there, and like you don't really like see too many podcasts that really focus on this type of music, and you do a
Mhm.
good job with it. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was, I kind of like you. It was like, it was a genre that was very special to me growing up. So it was, I've just been so in love with it forever that it was kind of a moth to a flame kind of a thing. Like I want to be closer to this thing, but I can't make it. I don't have the technical skill or whatever, or my skills lie somewhere else. So a podcast was
Yeah.
as good as I could do because I love running my mouth. So, but yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It has brought me much and given me much joy. So I can only imagine, the swell of pride that you must feel having people come into Dark Forest Fest and then leave it with such joyful expressions on their face and full hearts full of gratitude for this thing that you sort of constructed for them to enjoy. So yeah, thank you so much for that. As somebody who's benefited from it.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, it's definitely all about bringing people joy, and like that's just so rewarding.
Absolutely. Well, just to answer the question myself, thing I've been enjoying lately, not being outside. It has been, it's been like over 100 degrees here every single day for like a month or something now here in Sacramento. So,
Wow.
but the thing I have been enjoying is working on Void Signal. It has been, I booked myself out as soon as I got back from a small trip to Salem, and I have just been busy. And it's felt good to going to Mechanisms Festival, doing it live there, and being able to go into like the green room and run into people who know me who are like, "Oh, it's good to see you," and
That's
being
awesome.
recognized and stuff. It's good. Like things are
Nice.
good.
I gotta make it out to Mechanismus sometime. Like Ollie's super cool, and that's
Hmm.
awesome. They sold out last year. Like I want to give them props because, like, it's all about like supporting other people and keeping the scene alive. And definitely like I love what they're doing too.
Yeah, 100%. And you should make it out there. It is infectious. And we just recorded our reflection episode for Mechanismus last night, and I'm fortunate enough. One of the people from the Dark Force reflection episode, Hollingsworth, my associate, like he works staff at Mechanismus, and so it
Oh,
was.
nice.
So it's always interesting to hear his thoughts on like how things go in production because he, works as a promoter and everything. But yeah, you
Yeah.
should. It is. It's a fun trip. It is quite an experience. And it's interesting to me too, just as somebody who's been to both in the same year within a couple months of each other.
Yeah.
How different but similar the vibes are. Like you still have that like everybody is welcome here and here's a community for you to be a part of. But there's also that sort of like Mechanismus feels very much like a music festival, and Dark Force Fest feels much more like sort of a it's a music festival component, but there's like all these other sort of attachments and accoutrement to it of like, there's panels and it just feels a little more convention-y, I guess. And I quite like that. I think it what helps form Dark Force's like kind of identity and helps it stand out a little bit.
Yeah, I got it. And that's also like been one of my hesitations to change venues because I think people love is that we are, it's in a hotel and not only we're taking up all the event space, we have all the hotel rooms in there. So we have like 370 hotel rooms full of people staying there all night, like in the same venue. So people are just having crazy after parties all night. And it's just like, it's just like total, like just like a big party, which is kind of fun. And I think that's kind of comes down to because it's in a big venue where everything's kind of just there,
And other hotels are like not far away either. So it was like,
yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly.
I stayed at a rather questionable Days Inn, and it was, it was, it was only like a $10 car ride or something over to the venue every day. So I mean, it's like whatever, not that bad, but it's fine. You'd make do with what you got to get to a thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that was such a huge component of it, is like taking over the whole Sheraton and the space for after parties, and just how it feels like the party's everywhere instead of confined to a single venue. And I like that sort of a feeling to it. All right, well, I don't want to keep you too long. That is it. Thank you so much for coming and having a chat and being on the Void Signal and everything. Very grateful for your time and for Dark Force Fest and everything. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Void Signal intro and outro courtesy of Processor. Visit processor2.bandcamp.com for more Processor, and visit voidsignal.net to help support the creation of more Void Signal. Stay safe, stay loud.